Everyone, I am going to kick off the meeting. This is Debbie Beasley. So as you know, I have two bells that we use for the meeting. My start the meeting bell is my Melly bell. So that officially starts our call. I also wanted in my welcoming comments to talk a little bit about, just share one new thing. So as you remember, my mantra for the year is the vision of, or the power of one. So I wanted to share one new thing that maybe you've heard about and maybe you haven't. The Rotary Foundation trustees and Rotary International Board of Directors very recently and unanimously approved adding a new area of focus, which is supporting the environment. So that's pretty exciting. They have had 6 areas of focus up until now. The other areas of focus include peace building and conflict prevention, disease prevention and treatment, water, sanitation and hygiene, that's 3, maternal and child health, 4, basic education and literacy, that's 5, and then the last 6th one was community economic development. So by adding a 7th, that's pretty exciting. And so it's a new, hopefully a new learning for you. I'll also put in the chat that it's really easy to add an account on Rotary.org. You can, if you have trouble and you need help doing that, let me know. Lots of great information about what's happening with Rotary International, also about some of their projects. This is where I found the information around the 7th area of focus. So you can also go back and look at Rotary International Convention that was held virtually this year and see some of those clips. So I just wanted to put a plug in as a kind of a new learning, but also to sign up on Rotary.org and get an account set up if you haven't. You can also make donations directly through Rotary.org to Polio Plus and to Rotary International Annual Fund and Share. So there's your plug for the day. So with that, I would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You'll all stay muted, but please follow along. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So next I'd like to introduce Jean Herman, who is an artist and friend and fellow book club member with me. And Jean is leading us in the inspirational moment today.
Okay. Several years ago, my younger daughter, who is a organized, scientific-minded person, gave me a Christmas present, which was a book. It's called How to Be Directionally Challenged. Well, that was sort of a joke. In the Herman clan, those people, they always know. They never ask for directions. They understand right from left. In my clan, my 3 siblings and I could not find ourselves out of the proverbial paper bag. Now, admittedly, GPSs and phones have helped. That's a good tool. But when you give me directions, please don't tell me to turn north or south. Tell me go left at the yellow house with the picket fence. When I'm in a new place, and I'm deciding which way to go, I have a 50% chance of being right, or wrong for that matter. But what I learned from that is it's okay to be wrong. Now you're saying, why is this inspirational, Jean? What is the moment? It is about allowing ourselves to not know a solution. Except with COVID-19 especially, there is not a good way for all of us to deal with it. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay that someone's wrong on occasion, and you don't always have to be right. It's always good to have a map. Read the new Rotarian magazine. There's a neat article about having a map, but we don't have one now, and our leadership has not exactly given us a map. So go ahead, take a risk to be wrong sometimes, and to understand, ask for directions or help if you need it. It's okay. We'll get through this together.
Thank you. I like seeing all the claps. Yeah, very nice. Thank you very much, Jean. Next up is Troy Szymanski, who will be giving our club secretary's report. So Troy is again, our club secretary, and he is an investment counselor. So Troy.
Thank you very much, Debbie. All right, hello everybody. Before we get into the announcements, I'd like to start by welcoming our guests. We have Wanfang Murray, Catherine Nanda, who is a guest of VED, and Andrew Park. Next we've got, oh, also anybody we might have missed, apologies, welcome, thanks for joining us. Birthdays this week, we only have one. So, happy birthday to Dr. Jim Woodward. All right, so as always, let's start the announcements by, I'd like to invite you to our evening happy hours. It'll be tonight, starting at 5:30, and the Zoom link will be provided in our recap email today. Some important dates. Save the date for Darlene's retirement party on Wednesday, August 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Scientific Sod Farm in Commerce City. Keep an eye on your inbox for a formal invitation with a registration link. Our 17th annual peach sales are now open, so please visit denverrotary.org to order yours now. Peach pickup day is Saturday, September 12th from 8 a.m. to noon only at the Rotary office parking lot. Also on Saturday, September 12th, is the Woohumanity Bike Challenge. You don't have to ride to participate. And for more information, please contact your team captain, Carter Sales. And we hear he might complete the entire ride on his unicycle. So there's no excuse for you not to ride yourself, or at least to sponsor the Denver Rotary team. Last, this is a call for volunteers. The Denver Cherry Creek Rotary set up and is running a facility for Metro Caring where volunteers will break down the food staples Metro Caring is buying in bulk into 1 or 2 pound bags suitable to give to their clientele. Denver Cherry Creek Rotary is spearheading the staffing and running of this facility and are seeking volunteers to help do the work. So please join Club 31 as we support the work of our fellow Rotarians. For more information, contact the service team VPs, Lisa Gulias and Mark Whipper. That's it.
Thank you. And if, like you heard Jim Johnston plug at the beginning, there's some of us that are going on August 2nd. Jim, I think you're going in an upcoming date. So when is that, Jim?
Hoping to go this Monday. Usually the shifts are about 3 hours long, and the 9 to 12 o'clock shift on Monday morning that I brought my kids to a couple weeks ago, and we're hoping to do it again this week.
All right,
Perfect.
weekend. Fun time.
Yeah, it is.
All right, next up, we'll get to you next in a minute, Jim, but first I want to welcome Rick Luthold, who is the chairman of Sanderson Stewart. And Rick is going to talk to us about an exciting opportunity.
Opportunities. We love opportunities, Debbie. Thanks very much. So I am stepping into some big shoes this year. I am going to step in as chairman of the programs committee, taking over from Ben Allen there, and co-chairing with me, Peg Johnston. Between the two of us, we're going to carry that committee forward this year. And I wanted to put out the request and make available for anybody who'd like to be part of the programs committee to please get in contact with either Peg or myself. Leave your name in the chat today. As you can imagine, with my being vice president of meetings and events, programs is probably 80%, 85% of that particular task. It's one of the life's blood of our club, and I served programs here at Club 31. I also did on my previous club in Montana, and I find it to be one of the most energizing, one of the most interesting committees to be on, because you're always learning about new things going on in the community. You have a hand in what comes before this club, and it's one of the things that our members rank very high in satisfaction with regard to the club. So we have a great committee of folks that are already providing input and evaluation of the programs as we go forward. But as I make this ask, if we double the size of that committee, we would no longer be able to meet in Lucille's breakfast side room, but that's not an issue with Zoom. So I would just love to double the size of that committee and bring in new ideas, new thoughts with regard to programs that we can carry forward and bolster that. So please reach out to, again, Peg or myself. Leave your name in the Zoom here. If you want to touch bases with Debbie or Lauren and get your name to us, we would appreciate it. And we will carry forward bringing you the best possible programs we can. Thank you very much, Debbie.
All right, thank you, Rick. And there's, I think, no prior experience needed, right?
That's correct. Just bring your wonderful selves.
That's right. That's all that you need. So everyone qualifies. All right. Next is past President Jim Johnston, who is an angel investor, retired M&A advisor, and he is giving us an update on what we're calling Quest 31. Go ahead, Jim.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so Quest 31 that Debbie mentioned, most of you are probably familiar with that, but that's the name that we have given to the strategic planning effort that we're doing this year to help us figure out the future of Club 31. So Quest 31, or Q31 if you prefer. Right now we are in the phase of gathering information and details about the club and what people think about the club, both members and past members, prospective members, and some other stakeholders in the community. That's being done through observation of club meetings and the surveys, the survey that you saw go out, as well as a number of individual interviews that have been conducted by our consultant, Kate Kalstein, that many of you have met and talked with. So in the information gathering phase, so you know that she's working on a findings and recommendations report that should be available to us in a week or two, something like that. And we've put together an advisory group. It's pretty tough finding a group of people within Denver Rotary that are passionate and excited and diverse, and narrowing that list down to about 15 people or so. So we have people that have accepted the invitation to be a part of that steering committee to guide the discussion and evaluation of findings and recommendations, and talk about how we're going to include club members in discussions and retreats going forward through the course of the next several months. This is a project that we expect to go through into October, and we certainly want folks' input. So stay tuned for more information about that, but just want to keep it on your radar that it is in process. And thank you all who filled out the survey and have done the interviews and any other contributions you've made.
All right, thank you, Jim. With that, I am going to move to Carter Stales, who is going to lead us through the good news bucket, which is sharing of good news. So Carter, did we unmute you?
There we go. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, President Debbie. Yes, this is the segment of our program where we announce good news for a minimum of $20. The proceeds do go to the Denver Rotary Club Foundation. And if you'd like to announce good news, please click on your participants button at the bottom, and you can see a little icon there that will say raise hand. So if you could do that, and then with the help of Lauren, I do need to scroll through the screens. But also to donate after the meeting recap will be sent out to everybody, and so there will be a link to make your donation then. So we will open it up for good news of any variety. I'm scrolling through. I don't see anybody raising their hand yet. While I'm waiting, by the way, I'm looking for 10 riders for the Woohoo challenge. I've got 4 so far. So please contact me or you were sent an email a week ago Monday with, you know, the information on that, and I can help you walk through it in terms of registering. So who do I have for good news? No good news? There's got to be some good news.
I see Jim Johnston.
Bill. Hi, Bill.
Okay, Bill.
Hi, Bill. And unmute, Bill. Bill, can you unmute yourself there on the upper?
Here we go.
There you go.
I've got some
Bill.
absolutely great news. 1 week from today, I'll be getting in the car and driving to Colorado for a 2-month vacation in the mountains. How about that for good news for a guy who's suffering from the Florida heat?
That is good news. We will welcome you here to this great state of ours. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm scrolling through.
Johnston?
Jim, okay.
Sure, yeah. So I don't know if any of you have heard this or not yet, but there's this great service opportunity you can sign up for that's being run by the Cherry Creek Rotary Club. I just want to add a couple more details. The idea is that this is a food pantry whose demand went from 20,000 meals a week to 80,000 meals, actually per month, I believe, 80,000. And they've met that demand by getting pallets of rice and beans and flour and oatmeal in 50-pound bags on pallets. And you as a volunteer with your group of people in a very COVID-friendly sort of sanitary way can break open these bags, scoop it into smaller bags and put it into these milk crates that go off and get distributed to families by Metro Caring. It's a great opportunity. My kids have enjoyed doing it. If you're 64 or younger, the opportunity is open to you. Mark Donovan has done it a number of times. Ann McGeehan has done it, and it's fun. And I encourage you to sign up. You can do it on Saturdays, on Sundays, Mondays, and Wednesdays. I think are the 4 days of the week that they are doing it through a sign up. Look at your meeting recap for a link button. So it's a Rotary run project, Rotary developed, and we need Rotarians to volunteer to make it happen. So that's all.
Excellent, Jim. Thank you for that.
Julie Freshman.
All right. I'm sorry, say again, Lauren.
Julie Freshman has her hand up.
Oh, Julie. Hello, Julie.
Hi, Carter. This is.
I'm trying to find you.
Oh, because I don't have my video on here.
Oh, okay.
I can put the video on. There's my video.
I see you now. There you are. Hello.
So this is, I just would like to make a donation to one of our fellow Rotarians who is always supporting and loving and kind and there to lend a hand. And I would like to lend her a hand and some support and love today. So this is for Debbie Kaufman. And please, we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks.
All right. So who else do we have? Anybody else? I don't see anybody. Lauren, anybody?
Oh, Jill Santuccio.
Jill. Rotary, is that Rotary Jill? Is that who that would be?
It's Rotary Jill. I'm
Rotary Jill.
I'm going to give $20 in honor of two of my favorite Rotarians, Brian Geis and Harriet Downer, who have taken on a huge, huge, huge amount of work behind the scenes for the peach sale. I don't know how many of you have ever been intimately involved in the behind the scenes work of the peach sale, but there are a lot of logistics, both computer and otherwise, that go into it. And along with our new co-chair, Kevin Shellady, I just want to thank our leadership. It has been a really tough year. First, we didn't know if we were going to get peaches at all. And Brian pulled it out, and we are going to get peaches from Paonia, wherever in the world Paonia is. And he is closing in on finding us a new delivery service, because our old delivery service that we had for almost 20 years, as we know it, went away. So we have been scrambling. We have been working really hard behind the scenes. And the best way you can thank your peach committee is, instead of buying one box this summer, you can buy 2. Or if you normally buy 5, you can buy 12. So please go online, buy some peaches, because since Palisades was frozen this year, you might not have any peaches at all if you don't get them through the Rotary Club.
Thank you, Jill. We appreciate that. I see we're on out of time now, so I am going to conclude this. Thanks everybody for your good news. And thank you on behalf of the Denver Rotary Club Foundation. And I will turn it back to you, Debbie.
Thank you. Very good. Before I introduce our Susan to introduce our speaker, I want to do a couple minutes of Zoom etiquette so that we can make sure everybody is on speaker view. So up in your upper right-hand corner, if it says speaker view, click it. If it says gallery view, you don't need to make any changes. That will help give us a more polished and professional viewing experience. We'll also keep lines muted except for the speaker, but if you see for some reason your phone, your line becomes available, so make sure you mute yourself so there's no disruption. And then utilize the chat function at the bottom middle section of your menu bar. You can send something to me if you want. I can help gather the questions for our speaker at the end of the time. And if you don't see these menu options, you can move your mouse around the bottom of your screen or tap on your tablet or phone, and that will prompt it to pop up. So with that, I'd like to introduce Susan Brushaber. Susan is a partner of Reinhardt LLP, which is an international law firm with offices in New York, Stuttgart, and my very own Littleton, Colorado. So Susan.
Thank you, President Debbie. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Mr. Richard Lackey. Richard is a career entrepreneur with 30 years of leadership experience in the trading and securities industry. Mr. Lackey has been managing director of 5 successful private funds and founded and led companies that were sold to Goldman Sachs and E-Trade. He's the co-developer of the market prediction software PTI and the founder and CEO of Predictive Technologies International. He's also authored 3 books on technical analysis and investment management. However, this is not what brings Richard to Rotary today. His unique background includes several years in emergency medical response and medical missions in more than a dozen countries where he was exposed to devastating poverty and hunger. It is this expertise, as well as the inefficiencies of markets, that led him to create the World Food Bank in 2015 as a sustainable solution to hunger and food security issues across the globe. Based on his broad experience in business and humanitarian missions, Mr. Lackey realized that the suffering so many people experience from poverty and hunger can be prevented and alleviated through better integration of industry and political systems. Mr. Lackey believes that the World Food Bank will be the catalyst for global food security and so lift more than 1 billion people from poverty. Mr. Lackey is passionate about utilizing the World Food Bank as a solution for the inefficiencies that exist between small farmers and regional and global markets. It is this passion that has led to his presidential appointment to the Board for International Food and Agricultural Development, the advisory board for USAID, and to author the bestseller, Radical Response, Free Market Solutions to Global Crises. He has given several TED Talks on the topic, along with television and radio appearances, and it is with great pleasure that I welcome him to Rotary today.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much, Dick. Very, very kind. Let me make sure that I'm sharing my screen properly here. Here we go. Let me put it on the proper view. Does that look okay? Can everyone see that okay? Well, I'm delighted. I'll make sure that I have my timer on here as well, so that I'm honored the time that you've allowed me to be here. I'm delighted and grateful for the opportunity. My background, as she mentioned, I have about 8 years in emergency medicine, about 25 years or so in asset management and trading. And the last 10 years have focused on the global development for systems that help solve the challenge of food security. And interestingly, food security is tied to a number of other things, and we'll talk about that. I'm going to go off onto a tangent today because it's just a very interesting aspect. And after 10 years, we've come across a very interesting solution that allows us to leverage large-scale poverty alleviation, which I think hopefully, regardless of your industry or your background, is something that's quite exciting. And for those of you who have a little bit of gray in your hair, you may remember these two references. You may remember the advertisement from the fellow that had the razor commercial, and he said, "I like the razor so much, I bought the company." Well, that's kind of what happened here. I love the solution so much, we bought the company. You also remember a reference perhaps back in the day of a TV show called Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And it was hosted by a fellow named Marlon Perkins. Wild Kingdom was actually the show and the company that sponsored it, Mutual of Omaha, was part of a study of mine in university. And we realized that company grew tremendously just from having sponsored that show. So you'll see how that background for me tied in to the impact that media has had. And I'll walk forward from there. But as we go through this, these are some kind of circular things that create the guiding thoughts for the way we look at things. Jacqueline Novogratz wrote that we've seen traditional approaches to charity and aid don't solve the problems of poverty. In fact, they often create dependence. And almost without exception, those countries where we've been given aid in an improper fashion without supporting people, giving a hand out instead of a hand up, it's even more difficult now to turn the boat around. If you've watched any of the TED Talks that we've done, one of the things that I reference a lot of times are Greek philosophers because their wisdom is still valuable today. One of those was Seneca, who said that he who has everything to lose has a necessarily skewed view of risk. And one of the samples that I'll give you is if there was a lottery ticket, and I said, everyone in Rotary today, if you'll go on and pay $10, I'll give you an opportunity to win 10 times your money. And you have an 80% chance of winning. How many of you, we won't do a formal poll, but how many of you would buy that ticket? You have a 4 out of 5 chance of winning 10 times your money. Almost everyone would raise their hand, except for the ones that are doing something else, not paying attention. If it was $100, how many people would do that? Everybody would raise their hand. But what if it was $5 million and you had to sign over your house, your 401k, your IRAs, your pets, everything else, but you had the same opportunity, 10 times your money, and a 4 out of 5 chance of winning? There are going to be some of you that actually won't take that bet because the risk now involves everything. And now you're focused on the risk rather than on the reward. The poorest in the world, they think that way all the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So to get them to change the way that they look at things takes a little bit of work. But we can do it when we work together. And that is kind of the link to that Swahili saying, to go fast, go alone, to go far, go together. I won't get into the other ones because you'll recognize them and you can read them on your own. But the organization that I'm known for mostly in the US and when I travel internationally is the World Food Bank. It's actually a for-profit company that buys commodities when prices are crashing from small farmers to keep them making money, to give them a profit so that they will continue on. And then we take that and use a technology that allows us to store it for years if need be, and we sell it back during the spikes because of floods and drought and what have you, which happens all the time everywhere, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa and other parts of the world. So we use that arbitrage to make money, but we have narrowed the spread so that farmers can make a living and that manufacturers and makers of flour and cereals and animal feed can continue to produce at a reasonable price in those host countries. So that's kind of what we've done and what we do. This is just an example of one of those bags. This bag, as you can see, is huge. It holds 100 metric tons, more than 2 40-foot containers stacked on top of 2 40-foot containers. And the bag is actually airtight. When you put the top part on it and zip it up, it's hermetically sealed, much like what we would use to isolate a pathogen with Ebola. It's airtight. And what happens is the little pests that are actually still in those bags, after about 4 or 5 days, they respire the remaining oxygen. And now it becomes an oxygen-free environment. So bacteria, fungus, and pests, which we just call bonus protein, is all gone. It's all dead. And so we've actually had maize and sorghum and soy stored in bags like this for more than 15 years that still meets grade. So we're able now to take the calendar risk, the risk of time, out of holding a commodity, which allows us to treat food as an asset class. So our expectation is over the next decade that whether you know it or not, your institutional assets, your public employee retirement accounts and other funds will hold 1% of their assets will be held in long-term food storage that will stabilize commodity prices around the globe. So that's the background of World Food Bank. But let's take a look at the problem that we're trying to address. Of the world's poorest, 800 million rely on agriculture. And the irony of that is that over the next 10 years, we know the population is going to grow by 1 billion. And the 800 million that live in poverty, the preponderance of them are actually farmers. And those are the people that we need to grow the food to feed the other billion. So they need to get off their seats and get to work. Now, there's a challenge here because we're trying to solve their problem. But if we solve their problem of allowing them to grow more and better, they can feed the world. Ironically, if they can feed the world, they'll actually be lifted out of poverty as well. So those smallhold farmers around the world, we believe, are the secrets to solving the biggest challenge the world faces with regard to food security. And the general problem is that the agricultural value chains, everything from seed to soil all the way to markets, they don't have to be perfect, but they can't have major gaps. They can't be completely broken. And in many of these countries, there are major gaps in those agricultural value chains. What we've done is studied the value chains in 4 different continents and focused more heavily on Sub-Saharan Africa. And we found that if you are able to resolve these 4, what we call the magic 4, you could largely solve the problem of food security globally. The first one, and by far the most important, by far, is education. Farmers can't do what they don't know. They still cast seeds in many parts of Sub-Saharan Africa. They don't plant. They don't use rows. Their watering is pouring buckets on the top of plants, which erodes the soil and bears the roots, rather than irrigation, which takes less water, protects the soil, so on and so forth, simply because they don't know. Education is the number 1. Having access to quality inputs is probably the second most important, because the production, even on the lands that we see in places like Sub-Saharan Africa, have dropped about 15% in the past 15 years, about 1% per year. So, and that's because the soil continually is getting degraded and it's being burnt by the improper use of fertilizers, and the seed quality, they save some of the seed and they reuse it. They save some of it and reuse it. When you have a small property, the quality of seed ends up slowly going down. So having access to quality inputs is really important. The third is having access to finances. If you decide you're going to make that choice that you're going to borrow money to buy good seed, you're going to borrow the money to buy organic fertilizer, someone has to be able to give you some of the money, not all of it, not give it to you, but finance it for you. And that is a huge step, because as we've gone from taking people out of poverty, moving them into low income and into middle income, as we get closer to the base of the pyramid, it gets harder. Those people are even more desperate and earn even less than the fellows above them. So financing becomes important. And the last thing is, if they learn what they need to do and they use the inputs they need and they borrow the money, the folks that lend them the money, the people that source the inputs, want to know that they have a market to sell to. And that's where World Food Bank comes in. We guarantee them a market. If you grow maize, soy, wheat, sorghum, and you use good practices and approved seeds and organic fertilizers, we guarantee you a minimum price where you'll be profitable, to the degree that if you did it regularly, you not only would be out of poverty, but you'd actually be living in a middle income space. So we know that training people in groups, having model farms and training people has worked. And it helps improve soil health. It improves production 2.5 to 4 times. The problem is that while we've made a lot of progress, if we're really going to focus on a bigger group, 800 million, 480 million of those being in Sub-Saharan Africa, we have to reach a lot more. We bought a farm, 300 acres, and we could train about 450 people every season. We bought a 5,200 acre farm, which allows us to train about 7,000 people a year. But if you think about that, that doesn't even scratch the surface of reaching 480 million. And we have to build and borrow and raise money every time you do a farm. We'll never reach the goals doing that. So the model is effective, but it doesn't allow us to scale efficiently. So now there's a step in media group, and it's actually pronounced medii. It's Latin, like media with an E on the end, pronounced medii. I was appointed by President Trump a couple of years ago to serve as an advisor to the USAID. And one of the very first public meetings we had, I had the privilege to give an award to a company I'm the token entrepreneur on the board. There are 4 university presidents, a labor economist, an attorney, and myself. And so they said, well, you're the entrepreneur guy. We'll let you give the award for the company while the other folks give the award for research. Come to find out, this company has done amazing things over the past decade, but they never used a business model. They used a nonprofit model. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of things. A quick, it's better for you to see this 3-minute video than for me to walk through it, because he speaks as fast as I do, but actually covers more information. So I'm going to sit back, put on your African listening ears, because there's a little bit of an accent, but this is an introduction to Media.
Shamba Shape Up is East Africa's leading farmer TV program, reaching over 9 million people across East Africa. The program provides smallholder farmers with the information they need, from milk to maize in their own home, via TV, radio, SMS, and print. We have over 100,000 farmers request more information, and they are now on our database. From this, we can map their location and their interests. We can send these farmers questionnaires about how to improve the Shamba Shape Up program and what their information needs are. We can also invite farmers watching the show to join a particular interest group. For example, the potato group. They SMS potato into the database, and our expert can feed them with relevant information and answer questions directly. The program leads viewers around local farms, identifying problems and bringing in experts to solve them in practical ways. Rural viewers relate closely to the featured families and their issues. Research shows that they in turn adopt many of the improved practices, increasing incomes and improving livelihoods. This makeover reality show has been a huge success. Of the millions who watch the show, 87% learn something new from the program each series, and 50% adopt new practices. That's about 8 million people learning about chickens, dairy, soil, pests and diseases, tree planting, horticulture, water harvesting, and more. Recent in-depth research by Reading University, interviewing over 13,000 farmers in 25 counties of Kenya, showed that over 450,000 households had increased their incomes as a direct result of watching Shamba Shape Up. The viewers who farm maize or have at least one dairy cow and adopted changes to the Shamba Shape Up program increased their income or value of produce by $24,718,648. The program's success has seen it win several awards. And the program continues to grow, with episodes being filmed in both Uganda and Tanzania, and hoping to start a new series in Ethiopia. And the launch of an exciting mobile information service and a call center in Kenya called iShamba. Join us in this exciting venture and feature your improved farming technology.
I'll stop it there, but hopefully you can see that fellow's almost as excited as I am when we talk about the outcomes. You have 36% of viewers adopting practices, 36%. Of course, the people that's just their livelihoods, they're farmers. So we're now reaching 10.5 million people. That 100,000 people signing up for Shamba Shape Up, the SMS messaging platform, is now 100,000 a month signing up, because we send them free weather advice. And they select 2 crops. They give us the data that we need to get their GPS coordinates. And we tell them, you need to plant by Friday because there's going to be rain Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You may need to fertilize because the rains have been heavy and it's done so on. And we give them that for everything from dairy to fish to poultry to maize, soy, wheat, sorghum, mangoes, 20 different crops and 5 different animal groups. 25% increases in dairy productions in the first year. And many of them have 250% increases within 18 months. USAID gave them a $1.2 million grant to produce a whole new show to be able to study things independently. And a year later, 36%, the same as the study, which is 1.6 million people that had 4.5 million viewers in its first season. 1.6 million had a change in income that was going to take them from the edge of poverty to the edge of middle income within 18 months. 1.6 million people. The show costs 1.2 million. The cost to move someone permanently from the edge of poverty to middle income, this is not feeding someone for $30 a month. This is training them one time, giving them ongoing support every season for less than $1. You can see, hopefully now, just from that, why we purchased the company. On top of that, we've added additional revenue streams to make the company now really profitable and to be able to grow it and leverage the work that it does into other companies. Corporate sponsors come in and they talk about the seeds and the fertilizers and what have you. They were paying about 12 to 15% of market. We're now slowly increasing that. There's new advertisers coming in. There's now fees for marketing of projects and messaging. I'll give you an example. As one of the efforts in many parts of Africa is to stop burning so much wood. It's a pollution issue, it's a soil issue. And so we brought on a high efficiency alternative energy stove that would use waste and what have you. And that organization had sold 1,800 units in the prior 12 months. We featured them on the show. They sold 30,000 units in 90 days. These are $87 stoves with no financing, no nothing. So you can imagine now, we've also added partnerships with local banks that tell farmers, if you watch this show and you use the inputs that they talk about from approved dealers, we'll finance 60% of the cost of the inputs. Because they know they're better educated, they're using a better product, and I give them a guaranteed market. So we've built this ecosystem now that we're replicating from Kenya, now into Uganda, parts of Tanzania, and we're trying to take it across Africa. There are a number of other revenue streams that I won't get into, but I want you to really just understand what the impact really is. And quite frankly, up until about a year ago, my opinion, and still in large part, my opinion of media has been pretty negative. My thought is that media hasn't added a whole lot of value to the life of my family or my children probably over the past couple of decades. But quite literally, this is, if you go back to the days of ABC, CBS, and NBC, when there were only a few, this is the way that it is in many of the parts of the developing world. And so everyone gathers around to watch these TV shows. If we continue just at the rate we're going now, we'll have 143 million regular weekly viewers in 5 years. If the numbers are the same as in the 13,000 person study that he referenced, 51.4 million of those will be on a trajectory, not just to come out of poverty, but to be permanently and sustainably in middle income. Just that group will generate more than $1.1 billion in GDP for their respective countries. So we've purchased the company and we're now working to produce new shows in the markets that we go to. Once the shows begin airing after a year or so, they're kind of self-financing because the advertisers, what we call corporate sponsors and non-corporate or commercial and non-commercial, pay for the show to operate, and it's actually a profitable business with a little more than a 20% IRR, without including any of the data sales and any of the marketing sales, just from the sponsorships. So we're raising dollars, $3.5 million for 35% equity in the company. It has like I said, it has an internal rate of return of around 21%. I'm not going to get into too much of the details. We can talk if you have interest in that. But we know that it's a real need. I think everyone can agree that we have a population of poor that needs to be lifted out of poverty. We also understand that many of those are the ones that are going to feed the world. We know that this project works. They've been operating for more than a dozen years. They're now lifting more than 1.5 million people per year out of poverty permanently. The model is sustainable because of the sponsorship model, and it's effective, as we've seen now in more than a dozen studies. And it's efficient. As part of USAID, I asked the leadership there to bring with them the projects and programs they've done over the past 2 or 3 years, and to reach the same goals of giving people the education they need to modify the way that they farm so that they make income that will take them to middle income. The best deals were somewhere around $165 to $225 per person. This is 55 to 77 cents. It's 80 to 150 times more efficient. That's why we're doing what we do. We put together a great board, and I can't even share all the folks. We've added additional people. Jim Van Porsum's a former senior exec at Google. Edgar Caquano is a His father is Ernest Coquano that ran the coffee industry when it went from public to private. He did that, and that's the model that's used across Africa, is actually what he created. Gwen Martinez, in addition to being a tribal leader from the southern part of Zambia, is also very active in the social space and lives in Austin. Actually, she just moved from Austin, Texas, an hour away. And Julie Fellows, a great regulator, governance expert who is helping, because as you can imagine, as you grow and you have this kind of influence, governance is really, really important. And then Megan Kimberly is a former VP of global sales for Lionsgate and Stars. And the first thing she said when I called this and shared the concept, she said, you can literally lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty with this. Do you realize you have a tiger by the tail? And I said, well, I hope so. And she said, oh, it's unquestionably. And she said, I hope you're going to Indonesia first. And we said, well, why Indonesia? She said, well, there's 270 million people there. 73% are in agriculture, and they only have 50% of the locally produced content. So if you produce a show in Indonesia, you'll have 40 million viewers in a couple of years, and they'll actually let you keep all your sponsorships and share advertising with you 50%. So Megan is excited to be part of our board. And on top of that, we brought in some others. The leadership on the day-to-day, Patricia Gachinga is locally from Kenya, been a producer director for a long time. We have folks that ran DFID and other organizations out of the UK that have been involved for a dozen years. We even have a fellow named Akon, if you guys know who Akon is. He's kind of a global singer-songwriter. If you know who Lady Gaga is, she's on his label. will.i.am and the Black Eyed Peas are on his label. And he's the best known celebrity in Africa. He started a project called Akon Lighting Africa, and he went and got $1 billion line of credit from the Chinese, and has been putting solar powered lighting in rural spaces for the past 4 or 5 years. And he's excited, and this is his primary work now, is helping the expansion of MEDI and the World Food Bank. So that's kind of the leadership. I'll stop there, and hopefully we're about on time. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak with you.
We are precisely on time, and we have time for questions. And I do have a couple that have already gotten queued up. We'll let you in the slideshow, and I might be able to see hands a little bit better also. But I'll go ahead and start with the first couple questions I've received. From Troy Szymanski, who's our secretary. Troy's question is, there are some great numbers around how many lives you'll impact over the next 5 years. What is the current total number of farmers or potential farmers in those regions?
Great question. I actually have a chart, but I probably won't pull it up right now. West Africa is the largest because of the number of the population, largely led by Nigeria. We're planning to begin production later this year in Ethiopia, which has 104 million people. Uganda has about 45 million people. So the number of folks that we'll reach will be somewhere around 40 million viewers in East Africa within the next 3 years. In West Africa, that number will be closer to 60 million. And in South Africa, it's a bit lower just because the populations in South Africa and related countries. And we have to modify everything based on who has TV, who has access to phone, all of those sorts of things, right? So you really, in some countries, you go, wow, they've got 20 million people. Yeah, but if only 1 million have a TV or radio, you drop the number down, the target to 1 million, and you take the number of people that'll actually watch based on what we've seen in other countries. So you have to water everything down, and doing that, we still get the numbers that you've seen. Indonesia will be by far the largest with 40 plus million viewers. But most of them are going to be between 30 million in South Africa, 40 million to 55 million in West Africa. So South Africa, East Africa, West Africa. Thank you for the question, Troy.
We have a couple more questions that are coming in. So here's one from Jill Santuccio. Are there any potential domestic applications to help our domestic farmers, at least on the storage during up and down markets?
Really, really great question. I'll invite you to go to our other website called the Global Food Exchange. I was working on that now for 10 years. I've put a few $1 million into the effort, and if you've ever seen the commercial where the little boy is sitting on the edge of the bed and he's got marijuana in his hands and he's rolling a joint, and his father walks in and catches him and he says, "Son, what are you doing? Where did you learn that?" And he said, "I learned it from you, Dad. I learned it from you." Well, when you spend as much time in Washington, D.C. as I do, and then you go to places like Sub-Saharan Africa and you go, "How did you get so much bureaucracy?" It hits me. They learned it from us. They picked it up from their visits to Washington, D.C., and from people from D.C. coming, as Ronald Reagan would say, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." But there is an opportunity, and the way that you share messaging is really the secret to all of this. And they've worked through all of that internationally. Domestically, the bureaucracy is really one organization. It's called FEMA. And so we've worked with Red Cross, Salvation Army, World Vision, and a group called Cinder Leaf. If you don't know Cinder Leaf, they're the largest in the country for prepared food. So anytime there's a natural disaster where hot meals are being prepared, it's typically done by Cinder Leaf. Oftentimes they'll bring in a 20 or 40-foot mobile kitchen. Food is then delivered. They send out the reports to Cisco and US Foods. The food comes in sometimes 3 to 8 days later. They begin cooking. Salvation Army, Red Cross, World Vision, others hand the food out to local people. So Cinder Leaf has now tried it in 4 different areas as well as Puerto Rico. And we customize meals. So we created dried meals like you'd see camping, but our meals are regionally specific. So in the South, for example, we have grits. In New York, we don't have grits. We tried grits and they said we didn't have to make grits. They also said we didn't have to make that white sauce stuff that we call gravy. But so we modified all the meals. And in Puerto Rico, we have 4 meals that are very Puerto Rican. They love it, tastes like home. But those meals have a 20-year shelf life, and we've built a network of stored commodities around the US. We have about 1 million meals sitting there right now. The idea is those organizations will deliver it. They send the bill to FEMA and FEMA pays for it. But that requires that I write the check. So a few $1 million is a pool. But if you really want to do what you need to do, FEMA needs to buy those and store them in advance. So we've been working with FEMA for the past 1.5 years, 2 years, to do a study in partnership with MIT to show them the cost savings to have food that can store that long. To circle back to what you were talking about, the model works the same. I can now go to peach growers on the Western Slope and say, if you have a lot of rain in the last 3 weeks and prices drop, I'll buy all of your excess at 50 cents on the dollar. I'll buy your excess maize, your red beans, your rice, and I'll buy it and store it. And then when everyone's finished manufacturing, I can push it back to the manufacturers and smooth out their operations by having them dry and mix and put our meals together. So we originally designed it in the US. It's just in Sub-Saharan Africa, for whatever reason, they don't need chicken cacciatore or pasta primavera for that matter. They were actually okay with just sorghum and maize and wheat and rice. So we just store the broad scale commodities versus completed fortified meals. So that answered.
I have about 3 other questions it looks like queued up, and I hope we can get to all of them. So let me try. From Jim Johnston. Richard, you mentioned a loan from China to help ACOM. Is China getting more involved than in prior years? If so, why and how?
Really good question. I can't answer it all here, but I can do a 30-minute expose on it. So it's essentially called the mob model. If you have watched any TV movies over the years, they lend money. You can't afford to pay it back, so they take your car, they take your wife, they take your kids. Same thing. They go in and loan money to people that can't afford to pay it back, and then they say, hey, it's okay. Ethiopia, perfect example. $2.4 billion. You now owe us $200 million. Sorry, we appreciate the roads and the railways, but we just don't have enough revenue yet to pay that interest payment. It's okay. I'll tell you what. We'll tack it on to what you owe, and let's just say you don't charge any import tax for Chinese-made cars. Next year, I'll tell you what, you let us export commodities from here with no export tax. So they keep adding to the bill on the back end, and the credit line gets larger and larger, and they keep getting more and more rights that are advantageous against other people in the market of Africa. So that's what's really happening. There, it was right after the President Obama had raised taxes because of human rights issues, had said, we're gonna start taxing solar. So he went to the Chinese and said, you're getting ready to get turned upside down. I'll tell you what, I'll take some of that solar, but you have to give me a line of credit. And he got a line of credit at a fairly reasonable rate. So he's in think it's put in 4 million households. So there's around 15 or 20 million people that have these model TVs with USB ports and 4 lights for $395, and they finance like 60% of it. So there's a lot more, but those are kind of the 2 examples.
All right. Next question, Peg Johnston. Is World Food Programs any relation or a nonprofit?
Good question. I put all this together. I spent 6 months traveling through. I met with the leadership of the World Food Program. I actually spent 3 weeks with the head of policy and strategy. If you watch a TED Talk I did on the Zero Hunger Formula, we chat a little bit about that. But what we are is kind of the combination of the World Bank, who the leadership for Africa, for agriculture, are all good friends and hugely supportive, and have said on multiple occasions, we're doing what they wish they could do. They're obligated, if you didn't know, the World Bank is obligated to write checks to governments. They can't write checks to businesses or even to ministries directly. They have to go through the formal federal government and then line item it. So we're kind of a combination. Which is why we called ourselves the World Food Bank. We treat food as a commodity, or the commodity as an asset class, but we're able to solve some of those problems by building a network of stored commodities around the world, which is a little different. So we sell to them, but so they're a client and friends, but they're not us. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to sneak in at least a couple more if I can. So Bill Korstead, he wrote, Rotary has 1.2 million members in 33,000 clubs in almost every country in the world. We do many humanitarian projects around the world. Do you see a way to work with Rotary?
I would probably ask you, do you see a way for us to work with Rotary? The brilliant thing about the media function is that once it's, I don't know why I have all these TV commercial ideas on my mind today, but it's like the old Ronco commercials of set it and forget it. Once you're in a country for a couple of years, the World Bank actually funds 100%, 80%, 60% each year, which gives us time to build the corporate and the non-corporate sponsors. And then it's self-sustaining. So all we have to do is to pre-produce the shows and train the teams and get the marketing staff in each area, which is not grossly expensive. And once it's done, it's done. So right now, on making money, we are taking 1.2 million plus people out of poverty every year in Kenya. It's going to flatten out soon because we'll have met our density. But in other countries, we can open up as many as we can. So there is absolutely an opportunity. And quite frankly, we would love to find trusted partners. I mean, I grew up, if you can't tell from my Southern accent, I grew up in Georgia. And so I used to hear, is it true? Is it fair? Does it build friendships? Is it beneficial to everyone? I used to hear that a lot growing up. My father and grandfather were Rotarians. And you need Rotarians actually as partners in those countries, because your biggest challenge is twofold. Middle managers that can really get the job done, typically that are from the area but educated in the West, and trustworthy people to lead the way. Those are really, really critical. If you can't find them, you fail. If you find them, you're hugely successful. It's 180 degrees.
I might help make the connection with you and some of our World Community Services committee. So that'd be great. One last question and then some comments, and then we'll close. So the last question from Jim Johnston. On the disaster relief side, have you ever worked with the Rotary-led program Shelterbox?
I know Shelterbox, and I've seen him in Haiti. And I think we might have seen him when we were doing work in Guatemala. So by the way, kudos, because Shelterbox would never have made it to where they are today without Rotary. You guys are the catalyst. You're the lever that moved that rock. And it's a fantastic, fantastic tool. We believe that we can go side by side with what they do. A little difference is Shelterbox manufactures and then ships as needed. We actually try to work in the local country in advance to buy the commodities in the country. So Guatemala is eating the rice and the maize and the soy from Guatemala, and the meals are made from Guatemala. So rather than shipping US products there, we locally source. So the model's a little different, but the issuance or the serving of those products to the community can be done by the same people. So yeah, Shelterbox is one of the reasons that I first reached out to Rotary a long time ago, is because it's a brilliant model and has an exponential value for the cost per unit.
Well, you're welcome back to our club at any time. So please know that we have an open door. We had several comments thanking you for the great work. A comment from Chuck Everell that said, I strongly endorse Indonesian opportunity. This is largest Islamic population country in the world, becoming less secular, which is a negative, but they still are a very young country and have an entrepreneurial dynamic that is very positive. Good luck. With that, I would like to thank you again on behalf of the club. In your honor, we donated to the Polio Plus Fund, which will inoculate 33 children. With the 2-to-1 Melinda Gates match, that means a total of 100 children will be inoculated against polio. So thank you so very much. Two quick announcements. One is that don't forget to order your peaches. They're a hot commodity this year. And every meeting, after the meeting, we send a survey. We've added some question around meeting in person and your preferences. So with that, I'd like to read through the 4-way test before we adjourn. So again, you're muted, but please feel free to follow along. She's going to test my memory capability here. Of the things we think, say, or do. Oh, please. You know, it's like when you're on the spot.
Is it the truth?
Is it the truth? Thanks, Jim. Help me out here.
You may have to, Debbie. It's up for me.
Is it fair to all concerned? Oh, there it is. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thanks for bailing me out. With that, the meeting is adjourned and it's the official bell. So thank you. Have a great rest of your week.